Hey guys, Thomas the Solar Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. If you end up enjoying this full movie review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal where you can help support me and my channel directly, and fourth to my Discord server where you can join, collab, and share your own content there, and chilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. So I've seen the trailer for this like twice before seeing the movie. And of course there was, obviously this is a sequel to Knives Out. And from what I can recall from that movie, I remember being okayly impressed by it. At least on initial viewing. I don't remember how well it does hold up though. And that is one of the trickier parts about creating a mystery movie, in that when you're reviewing it with hindsight, it does become easier to say like, oh, I knew it all along, or things like that. I do think that that is a symptom of mystery that is very unfortunate, but I do think a very good mystery, despite getting to the conclusion, should at least be entertaining, have plenty of, actually puzzles and steps to figure out who it was responsible, and actually find clues. I think that's usually a part of a mystery movie, and I guess this is supposed to be a parody of that, because they don't really do a mystery of sorts. Well, they technically do, but it's not really a strong mystery, I should say. So yeah, we'll get to that, at least in this movie. So again, I don't remember how well the whole first one holds up, but that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about the sequel, which, technically speaking, you don't technically have to watch the first one, as this is a completely separate mystery. So even if it is a sequel, it still is a sort of a standalone mystery movie in a weird way. So there is that. So the movie does take place in 2020, so 2 years prior, and you can very well tell that that is the case with the COVID mask, and so on and so forth, and even the way that people are communicating in that sort of way that we had gotten used to in that 2 years prior. So we're following these four individuals in this Skype call, who we're learning a little bit about this like a thing that is being mined, that is like this bad thing that is like, is going to be bad for all of us or whatever. Anyways, we cut to our four individuals getting this wooden box, and the majority of them are trying to help each other out. And to give this movie some credit, it's like the most puzzly part of the entire movie, quite frankly. They do eventually start to montage through the clues after a little bit. And through this, we are introduced to some of our characters. There's Lionel, who's like the scientist. There's Duke, this literal Twitch streamer that's like this, I guess, manly man. He's played by Dave Bautista, excuse me. So, and it shows like a little moment after he's done with like his like stream, and then he's like something about women or something, and then like his mom slaps him. I guess that was like supposed to be like a comedy bit. Is my guess is what that's supposed to set up and payoff was supposed to be for, including introducing this character. So anyways, the majority of the characters solve it, which allows them to be invited to this party, for Miles's death, or one of those mystery death parties. Uh, Meanwhile, we cut to our detective, Mr. Blanc, as he's playing a little bit of... And I heard about this during the Game Awards. He's literally playing the game Among Us. A very, modern detective game with very basic, do your task, and then there are imposters who are out killing and stuff and solving for who did it and all that good stuff. So, that's neat that they did that, I guess, for the game. Anyway, so apparently he gets a box too. And, we cut to them after the fact at the shore. And we see that they are, once they take this shot thing, that they're able to take their mask off. We're introduced to some more characters. We meet Andy. She's on the far left, with the white and the red costume on. We have this unimportant guy who's, I think his name was like Daryl or something. Anyway. So we have Blanc pulling the host aside. And our host makes the claim that he didn't even invite him, so he's not sure why he's even here. But he invites him anyway, despite getting there. So I guess that all wraps that whole kerfuffle up. We have Claire, another character, and we have Birdie, who's the blonde on the lower right, or I forget which one she is actually on the poster. I think she's the one on the left, the farthest left, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, point being, we have Peg, and we have our host, Miles. So he kind of invites them and says, like, oh, this little party is meant to go through the weekend, and they'll do their little mystery party at some point. So we get little bits and bobs here where Peg and Lionel start to notice some sus behavior from Anne as she's moving about the locations very oddly. And thus, after we see that little moment, we see that Blanc has been sort of starting to shift and listen to some of the conversations, so he's sort of laying low behind, seeing Duke, catch Miles and his girlfriend, quote-unquote, sleeping together. This is where Miles takes out that tiny crystal that I mentioned earlier. It's like the power source that he claims that is powering the entire building. So, the dinner is set after he confirms that this whole place is built off of that. He says that, everyone eat up, or whatever, and then Blanc is too anxious to help solve the puzzle, so he asks, is the quest, or the mystery beginning? And once he does, Miles claim that, it's done, or you can begin. Within moments, Blanc solves the fake mystery puzzle, finding out that it was Birdie, putting all together the clues that were already established through either the magazine, certain things he spotted, like the necklace, and he even shows the weapon, and so on and so forth. So obviously this frustrates Miles, and he heads upstairs. However, we see that Blanc has a want to help warn him that he is put in a little bit more than he bargained for. All the while, we see that Anne wants to learn the truth about why she was the one left behind and why she had lost all of her assets, essentially, since she sort of essentially helped all of them to a degree. Well, but it was Miles who helped them, so they clung to him more than her. However, during this little party, we see that Duke, after being handed a drink by Miles, starts to drink the drink, and starts to choke to death. Now, unfortunately, I don't remember if they do this or not. I think what this... I'm going to have to see this movie again, or at least this part of it, because they show this later on in the movie as if this was some sort of like... And I think there might have been some camera cheats here or something, where it doesn't show Miles at the first part, maybe, or maybe it did, I don't remember, honestly. Point being is that I'm telling you now, like, that's who's responsible for the deaths that happen in this movie already. Because it's not worth, investigating. However, Miles sees that the drink was meant for him, even though he was the one who let it down for Duke. So the lights go out temporarily, and we see certain characters like Bird return with a weapon in hand. Blanc talks with Anne outside from their moment of reprieve, and then we see Anne get shot through this glass-paned window after their discussion, or a part of their discussion anyways. So he forces the group to regroup, and he tells them that he needs to figure out who is responsible for the death of Helena Brand. We then cut to her, in which we learn that her and Anne are twin sisters, played by the same actress. Helen, so for the sake of brevity, I'll just call Helen Anne for continuously not getting the two mixed up, obviously. But just know that the person we've seen prior is always Anne throughout the movie, because Helen is dead. Anyway, we see these little flashbacks where Blanc convinces her kind of essentially to go, and she confines to do so. So we see a flashback, more flashbacks in this middle part of the movie, where we see how this group beforehand, some time ago, used to have worse jobs, and how I mentioned how Anne introduced them to Miles, and then Miles was the one who sort of uplifted each and every one of them. We learned that Blanc hates Clue, so this is another bizarre thing where it's like whenever it comes to a game that he seems to be willfully not great at it, or either too good, like he solves it in like one turn or whatever, seems to be like the implication there. So we follow through this little flashback, we continue to follow Anne's movement, or Helen's, as through this flashback, as we're sort of catching up to what she was doing throughout all of this. She learns how, again, Duke was getting his channel up through Miles, and how all the others had reasons to also take out Miles through other means, and so on and so forth. How Peg and Lionel also were in on this little crystal thing, so they also have a motive. see that Whiskey almost, like, throws a harpoon at her when she's, like, barreling through the rooms, and we see how her part in all of this is catching up alongside the current events, because this is all still a flashback, although sort of re-catching us up to where she, quote-unquote, died. So after we see what she overheard, we see her again catching up to the dialogue that we just saw, and then we see that the bullet was stopped by her notepad and the glass as well on top of that, so she was actually not in any death danger at all at the whole time. So as I mentioned earlier, we learn through our contemporary means of Blanc saying how poorly designed this whole thing was. Miles going about how him killing Duke. And we see it now in the frame, if it wasn't last time, how he handed him the drink, and the drink had something he was allergic to in it. Anyway, this is where we see Anne as Helen return to the party, and now everyone's like, ooh. We also learn that he was also responsible for Helen's death. On top of that, we also just hear outright Duke's character essentially admit that pretty openly. Blanc hands her the little crystal thing, and then she proceeds to be so mad that she starts to break all the glasses in the room, like they're all these fancy glasses, and even some of the others partake. She then proceeds to use the little crystal and send it up, and then it brings down the entire building into flames, or a good chunk of it anyways. She runs towards this poster, or this portrait of the Mona Lisa that was mentioned earlier, and how he had a fondness for that particular thing throughout the movie, and thus she proceeds to burn it. And once the house is burned and everyone's like sort of outside, and we see the cops coming in, Miles is like, hey, come on guys, and everyone's like, nah, we're not on your side anymore, you kind of lost your, mojo, so we're out. And thus, Blanc and Anne, or Helen, I guess go their separate ways. And that's Glass Onion, a Knives Out, a murder mystery movie. So yeah, I think that this movie has a lot of issues. For one, I don't think the level of mystery is present at all in this movie. It makes it pretty clear, spells it pretty out, obviously, who's responsible, pretty quickly. All of the other sort of contenders kind of, once it's like shifted to be like, oh, there's like this Helen woman who actually died, it's like, oh, okay, well, we all know who actually did it, so. Yeah, this movie doesn't have any sense of a red herring, which at least on initial viewing, I remember the first movie at least having, so it feels like it fell flat on that part. It feels like it fell apart on, finding actual clues. Like, even Blanc, his literal dialogue was like, this was so easy, like, it was so stupid. So, if you have the characters omit in your movie that your mystery is stupid, then what was the point? What was the point of making a mystery movie? What was even the thread that led you to that conclusion is my problem with this. So what I think could have been, this movie needed a lot of touches and a lot of edits, I feel like, to readjust. One thing I think could have fixed the whole Helen part is have Blanc and Helen's parts happen side by side instead of like half and half. I do feel like doing the half and half thing is the cutting of that kind of breaks the sort of vibe and tension of like who could have been responsible. Once again, we learned about Helen's death in general. So once she is shot but survives, that is when the movie is ruined officially, because you know who it is. So that's the main problem. So the question is, how do we fix, how would you objectively fix this movie? And I think that one way, kind of scrambling with the information we already have presented with us and keeping sort of the same vibe open. I think, again, what would have made it better is by sort of, again, following both Blanc and Anne, having their moments happen, like his moment happens in the first little section and then we rewind, and then it's back to her perspective, and then it shifts back and forth through each little perspective up until that moment. However, I don't even think that she should have been shot. I think that that's a very poorly handled, like, misstep in this. I do think the whole, like, leaving it to, making the death of Duke, if that's, the main person you want to have be the, the sort of tipping off point, because he is technically the first person who dies. If that is the case, I do think that the lights should have gone out first, and then the drink should have been there, and then he should have taken it, and then he should have died, or something, like some rearrangement of the events. Or there are other ways you can mess around with this. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunities here, as you've put quite the open cast here. If the movie was all about implying, at least initially, that he was the one who was going to die at his own party, and, the whole setup and the joke was kind of, or, like, initial part of it was been like, oh, he's, like, faking his own death, and it's going to be, like, this whole faking thing. And then it does, like, the fake arrow, because, like, during, Blanc's reasoning and detective skills, like, he goes through it, and it shows, like, after he does it, this little fake arrow hits him, and this blood spurt, spills out. I think what would have made that moment, it could have, who else could have been responsible for killing him? What would have made that way more effective is actually have another arrow from another direction also coming in, and then actually hit him, and then actually, doing the job. And then mystery then unfolds from that point moving forward. There are quite a few ways you can even sort of, splash out from, and I know that that in itself would make it an entirely different movie, as to, again, since he's the one responsible, now we have to find out, well, who else would have done it, and the movie, again, goes through all these lengths to tell us all these other people's reasoning as to why they would kill him. So it all seems to point as to that could have been the case, but it's not even that. He ends up just being the responsible guy, and we see it very clearly, pretty quickly as well. So, again, I feel like the amount of clues, like, even the first movie, it felt like they were going through this process of, like, they're retracing the steps, they're interviewing people one by one, those little parts of Knives Out I do appreciate, even though, some people might have caught on pretty obvious, to the obvious killer was, even on initial viewing, whatever. But despite that, I do think that this movie, that sequel, could have easily just has been just as much of a mystery, maybe even more so. With the amount of motives you had and characters and just different, it was much of a family thing last time. No, it's like these business partners. So you actually open up the window of possibilities here, actually, in a weird way. And, the writing just doesn't take advantage of any of that. It, fumbles and just outright admits pretty early on, like, nope, there's this easy to solve puzzle at the beginning that's not even like, Miles' whole fake death, and then, like, the actual mystery, quote unquote, isn't all that strong either. Barely a mystery to call it on its own. So if I'm going to consider all of that, as well as their characterization, I do think that this is significantly weaker than the first film. I'd probably give it like a 3 or 4 out of 10 fully, if I'm being as objective as possible. I think some of the dialogue saves it, but there are just too many issues here with this one, objectively speaking. And that's going to be my full review for Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. And if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. And we'll head you over to my petition, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, fourth to my Discord server. Any and all donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.